Hi guys, one of your other assessments that you're going to have to do is the recessed metal box installation. As always, we're going to be doing the tool list, the material list, the method statement, and the two that I missed last week, which are the safety precautions and the PPE. Next thing we're going to talk about is the safety precautions. The first one is what we talked about when we was doing the dry lining box, and that's the safe zones. The safe zones are above, below and to either side of where you're installing the socket. So just make sure before you start cutting into a wall, whether it's doing this job or doing the dry lining box, that you're not going to hit any cabling. This also applies for pipe work. Pipe work also fits into these safe zones. So for example, a radiator, the pipe work may be going straight up above the radiator into the ceiling. There is another safe zone, and that is in the corner of each wall, 150 millimeters. And the last safe zone is above the ceiling, or along the top of the ceiling should I say, and again that's 150 millimeters. So just to go through them again, the safe zones are horizontal and vertical of every electrical point of use, and also in the corners of a wall, 150 millimeters from the corner, and along the ceiling, 150 millimeters down from the ceiling. Be very, very careful when you're doing any work in these areas that you don't hit any cables or pipe work. The next thing is drilling and chiseling. You want to make sure that when you're drilling and chiseling that you don't go too deep. Some walls are only this thick. If you go in too hard with the chisel, you'll bust the brick out the other side and cause a big problem. There'll be a lot of repair work to do if you do that, especially in somebody's home. It goes the same with drilling. When you're drilling your back boxes into the wall, make sure you don't drill too deep. Again, this can be aided by using a piece of tape on your drill bit, measuring how long your screws are, putting the tape onto the drill and making sure you don't drill deeper than that white tape or whichever tape you use. And the last thing is dust. We may be using dust masks when we're doing this work, but make sure that everybody else who is in that room is also wearing dust masks. Brick dust especially is a carcinogen. It can be really damaging to your lungs. The tools that we're going to use is a level, a tape measure, a permanent marker, a piece of chalk, a lump hammer, cold chisel, a scotch chisel, a 5.5mm masonry bit, and a drill. The materials list is a 2-gang knockout box or recessed metal box, 2 wood screws and 2 wall plugs. The PPE I'm going to be using is my steel toe cap boots, my work clothing, some goggles, some gloves and a dust mask. An additional thing I'm going to be using is my dust sheet. Before we start going into how to do this job, I want to talk to you about the 3 scenarios you're going to come across when installing metal boxes. The first one we're going to talk about is when you're installing them on a new installation. Typically this is going to look like this. There's bare brick and the stud work has not been covered. It's very important in new installations that you communicate with the plasterer. The plasterer can use a variety of methods to plaster the wall. The first one I'm going to talk about is a method called dot and dab. This is the most commonly used method. Dot and dab is now the most commonly used method as it's relatively easy. the plasterer will get a piece of plasterboard, he will apply an adhesive to the back, and he will simply stick the plasterboard to the brickwork. When dot and dab has been used, the plasterboard does not sit flush onto the brickwork. A small gap is left along the back. This is brilliant for electricians because it means that the boxes that we use may not necessarily need to be chiselled into the wall. The most typical type of box that we use has a depth of 25mm. This is usually shallow enough that the back boxes can just sit onto the wall and the plasterboard will reach the edge. This means that once your box has been drilled and fixed onto the brickwork, the plasterer will cut out his plasterboard and fit it around the back box, leaving the edge flush with the plasterboard. Once again, it's important to communicate with the plasterer, as the board may be fitted closer to the wall or further away from the wall, meaning that you will have to either chisel the back box into the brickwork or use a deeper back box. The other two scenarios is when you're working in an existing installation. The plaster could have been installed using dot and dab, which we've just been through. The other installation method is called wet plaster. This is, instead of using plasterboard, a layer of sand and cement is applied to the brickwork and then a layer of plaster is put on top of it. Your assessment will be done on an existing installation, meaning that the wall will already be plastered. If it's plastered using dot and dab, you must cut away at the plasterboard with your pad saw before chiselling away at the brick. If it's fully plastered, then you'll have to use a hammer and chisel right from the beginning. In my demonstration, I'm going to put the box flush with the brickwork. However, you will be putting the box flush with the outer plaster. The method will be the same. The height of the socket is the same as the dry lining box. It has to be between 450mm and 1200mm. I've drawn a line here at 450mm. I'm now going to put my box on the line like I did last time, and I'm going to draw around the box. Then I'm going to use my level. And draw over my lines. As you can see, the lines that I've drawn extend further than the box is being installed. The reason why I do this is while I'm chiselling out this brickwork, it can be easy to lose track of where your lines were originally.
Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now.
Now that I've got all my PPE on, I can start work. I'm going to use my cold chisel and my lump hammer to mark out the shape of the box. Once the perimeter has been marked out, the rest of the brick has to be removed. There are a variety of different methods can be undertaken here. Some people say starting from the outside and working your way in is the best method, and others say starting from the inside and working your way out. However, I've found just moving slowly up and down and side to side of the brick, taking your time, removing small amounts of brick is the best method. The reality is, different manufacturers of bricks react differently when chiselled. Play it by ear and take your time. As I'm trying to make this box flush with the brickwork, I need to chisel into the brickwork 25mm. Periodically, I use these two rulers to see how deep I am into the wall. When chiselling into the brick, you may find that there's cavities inside. It's quite easy to bust through into these cavities. Don't worry about it though, just be very careful once you've broken through that you don't take a large chunk of brick out. As you can see, the cold chisel is very good for removing large pieces of brick. Once you get close to the depth that you need, swap over to the scutch chisel. The scutch chisel is for shaping brick rather than breaking the brick. When installing the box, not only do I need it to be flush with the outer edge, I also want it to be stable once it's been screwed back. I can check the stability of the box by putting it in and trying to rock it back and forth. If it moves, it means that it's pivoting on a piece of brick, and all I need to do is remove a small piece of it to stop it from rocking. Once we've chiselled the wall, it's time to fix the back box. The first thing we need to do is select the type of screw that we're going to use, and then select a wall plug that's going to fit that screw. I've selected these 6mm red wall plugs. Normally speaking, you would then use a 6mm masonry drill bit. However, I'm going to use a 5.5mm masonry bit, as I find that it holds the screws in a lot better. I'm going to attach the drill bit into the drill, twist the chuck and tighten. I'm now going to drill the box into the wall. I'm either going to use these two holes in the centre, or this hole and this hole at the bottom and top. The reason why I'm going to use these elongated holes is that once it's been fixed to the wall, if it's not quite level, there is some adjustability in the box. In this case, I'm going to use this top hole and the bottom hole because the brickwork looks more solid in those positions. I'm going to line the box into the hole, use my permanent marker, I'm going to mark where I'm going to be making my drill. Now using the drill, making sure that it's on the hammer setting, I'm going to drill into those holes. I'm going to start off very slow and then gradually pick up speed.
A few moments later.
Now that the box has been drilled and fixed into the wall, make sure it's level and make sure that it's flush with the outside brickwork or plaster. Now that the boxes have been installed, we would normally now make a chase up the wall for the wirings to drop in. However, because this is in the workshop, I don't want to damage the wall too much, so I'm not going to chisel out the trough for the cabling. The cabling would either be clipped directly to the wall and then covered with something called capping, or it would be installed in something called oval conduit. There are a couple of ways we can make this job easier. The first way is by using a drill to drill around the perimeter of what you're chiselling out. What you would do is you would find the depth of the box that you're installing, and using a piece of tape, you would mark on the drill how deep you need to go. You would then drill all the way around the perimeter, making small holes, so that when you chisel out, it doesn't bust the brick and make a large section where you have to repair the wall. Another way of making this job easier is by using an angle grinder. Just like using the drill, we can cut around the perimeter of the box where we're chiseling to aid chiseling it out. The problem with using an angle grinder is that it produces a lot of dust. You don't really want to be doing that method if you're working on a building site and there are other people in the room. You also would never use this if you was in somebody's home. The dust that it produces would just settle everywhere and you'd cause a big problem. It's very likely that when you're installing back boxes, you're going to damage the surrounding plaster. To simulate this, I've just attached the plasterboard onto the wall and pulled the box forward a little bit. Let's just cause a little bit of damage to this plaster so I can demonstrate how to patch it in. I'll do a bit over here as well. Let's do this top corner. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the damage that's been caused. So I'm going to use a brush just to remove all of the loose debris that's inside of the damage. And I'm going to clean up the damage that's been caused. You don't want any stray bits to be sticking out where you're repairing the wall. I just use a ready mix filler. I find it much easier. For large damage, it's possible that you have to do this in layers. Due to the drying times of this product, I was unable to finish this final stage. I will complete this part next week.